Little video update of my engine coming apart. I have the cam carrier off, the intake and exhaust manifolds off. Now I'm going to remove the valve train and then pop the head off. This gasket you see is a home brew I made many years ago. It's honestly a shopping bag. I just cut it up to fit because I didn't have enough gasket material to make a gasket out of gasket material. And plus, it's thick. Gasket material's thick. And this is supposed to be sealed with RTV or silicone sealer, and I didn't want to do that, and I anticipated taking it apart a few times, so I made a gasket, and it held up for I don't know, 12 years or more. Whenever I built this engine, 2010, so a while. These rockers were all brand new when I built the engine. You can see that they they have normal looking wear on them. The only thing I did see I didn't like, let me take a quick video of it, is the camshaft. If you can see, if I get close enough, you can see what looks like a ridge at the edge. See it? Which my first thought was, this cam is junk. But I checked it with a dial indicator. I checked the valve lift. I mean, look at that. It looks like a huge ridge, doesn't it, right there? Yikes. But it registered, I think it was 256 lobe lift. And I believe the rocker ratio in this engine is 169 or 17. And that comes out to about 435 valve lift, which I believe is stock for this engine. It's 435, 440, that area. So I don't know. I'm changing the cam anyway. It doesn't look good to me, but I don't know. Thought I'd take a quick shot of that. So let me do some more work here and try to stitch these videos together into one longer video. Before I pop the cylinder head off, I wanted to showcase something. I said in a previous video, I had a friend of mine drill and tap this block for 1/2 inch studs so I could use ARP studs because I didn't like the stock torque to yield non-reusable bolts. At the time, either ARP didn't make studs for this thing or I was too dumb to realize it, but regardless, the block is drilled and tapped for 1/2 inch ARP studs, and the problem we had was because the stud rather, was so much larger than stock, the original guide for the cylinder head wouldn't fit. So my buddy at the machine shop who did the valve job and head work at the time, block work for me, he had this guide for a Toyota. Very thin wall, happened to fit perfectly. So any machinist out there watching this probably know exactly what this thing is, but it's just a very thin wall guide pin, which allows the ARP 1/2 inch stud to work with the original cam carrier and cylinder head. So something I wanted to note with posterity. One other thing I just noticed was that taking this thing apart, this cam follower had blown apart, lash adjuster rather, this thing blew apart. I don't think it's a big deal, but this one, actually looks like it broke through the sheet metal. That's interesting, huh? I don't know what causes that. I mean, these are stock springs. At the time I built this motor, I couldn't find replacement springs. I had the machinist, machine shop check these, and they were in spec, so I just kept using them. I don't know. This thing shifts at 6499 or something, 6500. So, I mean, that's stock. I didn't do anything to that. The rest of them are all fine. Oh, there we go. That one popped out too. What the hell is that? Oh, isn't that delightful? It's a little valve here or something, a little metal thing. Oh boy. So I gotta figure out where that goes. I mean, I'm sure it goes inside of this gizmo. Interesting, but shit, I don't know. Anyway, oh, it goes right there, I think. See, it's wide open. And this one has a, where is it? Has a piece in it, so it's gotta be that. So anyway, I'm just trying to take a long, detailed look at this engine while it's apart and see what's up. If I can find lash adjusters, I'll buy a new set. Otherwise, we have to refab these. Man, this like actually broke out right there. Doesn't look like that. It looks like it's cracked right there or something. I don't know. Weird, but and this one just popped off. Yeesh. Anyway, so let me keep on going here and see what I'd find. So my cylinder head is removed, and there's nothing really exciting to see here. It's just a carbony looking old engine. I mean, it's only got about 5,000 miles on it. I rebuilt it at 7,000 miles. I rebuilt it like 110,000, that area, and the car's got 117 on it now. Nothing really exciting to see here. I mean, it's been ported. I'll clean it up and try to take some better shots of that, but was burning a little rich, but you know, they all look fairly uniform. One thing that kind of made me laugh, and maybe you'll laugh too, is when I popped this head gasket off, I was thinking, is this thing O-ringed? I can't remember. I thought it was, but I honestly can't remember. And before I get to that, here is another pair of those guide pins, which again have to be thinner than stock in order to you know, fit in the block and fit the stud through it. So another pair of Toyota, as far as another Toyota guide pins. Let's get rid of those. And throw them right here. Clink. All right, now this gasket is an Isuzu gasket for like a 2.2 in an Amigo or some Isuzu. One of my friends thought these had superior sealing abilities. I couldn't tell you. I have stock gaskets, I have Napa gaskets. I don't know what, I mean, this definitely held up better than all the rest, so I will stay with this. I think I have a few more on the shelf. Back in the old days, you could buy these for 15, 20 bucks. I don't know about today, but anyway, to answer the question, yes, this block is O-ringed. You should be able to make them out. It's right there. Boom. I couldn't remember if I took them out. I've had a few engines with O-rings, and this one I couldn't remember if I left them in or not. So it is O-ringed. And this was a, I don't know if I said this before, this was not a rebuild engine. This was a brand new, what GM calls a fitted block. It's a brand new block with pistons and rings, and that's it. No rods, no crank, no nothing. I don't know why GM sold them like that, but they did. So this is a 2-liter turbo short fitted block rather. So these are the Molly forged pistons. I actually have an email exchange with Molly from way back when I first bought these things. And they said these are Molly, M-A-H-L-E, by the way, is Molly, the German company. You probably heard of them. They said they are forged pistons. They did make them for GM, OEM, and the Sunbird Turbo. A lot of people think the rods are forged, the crank is forged. I don't remember if the rods are forged, but I can tell you the crank is definitely not. I'm gonna go with the rods are not forged, because it seems like every other one of these I've seen in the junkyard put number 3 rod through the block. They usually break right around here, right behind the turbo. For whatever reason, one bolt would be out of the rod, one bolt would be loose, and the rod would snap off around the mating surface. And as far as I recall, they are not forged rods. So I don't think they're forged rods. I'm almost positive that they're not a forged crank, but Molly told me they are forged pistons and they seem really durable. So anyway, I got sidetracked. But so this is your 2-liter short block. These are your 2-liter turbo pistons. They have a bigger dish than the naturally aspirated 2-liter. The compression is like 8-to-1 or so in stock form. And again, this one's O-ring. You can look at the gasket and see the fire ring. Definitely has the groove in it from the O-ring. So I tried to make this thing stand up to a shitload of boost, which is what I used to run through it. 24, there's actually a video on YouTube. If you watch it, it's got 26 pounds. It held up well. The only problem with this really is when I would put it together, it would seep antifreeze here and there out of the head. And it finally occurred to me one day, it's probably the O-ring and the fire ring. Yeah, the interference fit is holding the head up just slightly enough so it can just seep antifreeze. So I got in the habit of sealing it up with silicone, which sounds super butchy, but all I'm doing is sealing the, the water jacket area. Just a little bit of silicone there just to keep any weeps out. I mean, I'd pressure test the engine before I'd assemble it. There's one right there. I know it worked because when I took this thing apart a minute ago, I had to use a rubber hammer to separate the head from the block. That's how stuck this thing was. You can see it right here. A little more ITV. I mean, just a smidgen, you know what I mean? And again, this thing has 7,000 really hard miles on it. So I beat the piss out of this thing. This gasket actually says something on it. It says, what does that say? Ah, it says Uben, top. There's a part number too. It's 09-129-040. I'm gonna guess Uben is a German word. I don't know, but the Isuzus are what, Japanese? The Japanese, I believe. So I don't know what the correlation is between the Japanese engine and the German head gasket, but maybe they found them out to some German subsidiary. I don't know. I don't care, but they're a good gasket. So anyway, I'm digressing again. So one thing I will show you is when I built this engine, I I stamped into it C20 GET TC Turbo number 1. TC is my initials. And Turbo number 1 is probably because it's my first one. God forbid there'll be any more than this one, but I do have one more of these in my basement in a crate still. It's just a block and the pistons and rings. So I'm gonna take this thing apart some more. Ultimately, I want the pistons and rods and everything out so I can check the rings, probably change the rings. I'm not sure if I have to change O-rings. Talk to my buddy Scott, the machinist extraordinaire I use these days, and see what he thinks. And that's it, so I'll keep on going. All right, I took the oil pan off, and here's something you may not know. The oil pan gasket originally is a windage tray with a rubber gasket bonded to it, which I believe is what this is. I think I bought a brand new one from GM. You can still buy this stuff back then. What the replacement gaskets are basically is a split rubber gasket that slips over the sides of the windage tray, or I think some people make a two-piece rubber or cork gasket you glue to it. Either one will probably work fine, but I thought it was kind of cool that it comes with a stock windage tray. Maybe all the 2 liters do. I've only been in the turbo engine myself, but I thought it was kind of neat. And one other thing, I'll show you quickly. You got the oil pan draining over here, but I thought it was kind of neat that all I've ever run this thing is Royal Purple synthetic oil. Look at the inside of the pan. I mean, this thing is super clean. I mean, you know, I had it lying outside. That's the dirty Royal Purple, but I don't know. I was impressed that it came out that clean. I mean, again, I change the oil all the time with this thing. My sister did too, but it's kind of impressive. And again, this is the European aluminum oil pan. It's actually a GM part. You see right there the number, 902963111. Got that my buddy Steph over in London. Kent, I think he's in. So there you go. There's the oil pan off, windage tray, and the basic guts. I'll pop the windage tray off soon and take a look at the crank and all that crap. Last video of the day. The windage tray is off, the oil pump pickup pipe is off. You can see my beautiful ARP connecting rod bolts. And the main bolts, I think are just GM main bolts. I can't really tell. I'm looking through my camera thing here. I can't tell, but let's assume for the minute that they're just stock GM bolts. You can clearly see that the connecting rod has a thin parting line, as does the crank on this throw right here, which reinforces my belief that it is not forged. It's all cast. Again, there is a thin parting line, and again the rods, thin parting line. There it is. It's hard focusing through my camera with my eyes at the same time. I can zoom in a little. There we go. See the little thin casting line right there? That usually means it's a cast piece. You know, forged is a very wide forging line, if you want to call it that. Forging mark. But anyway, so that's what it looks like. These little pins here, I believe these are for European use. There would be a sensor that go right there, like a crank sensor. Hall effect switch, something like that, I don't know, but I believe that's what that would index into. My engine doesn't have that. None of the turbo engines did, although the 92, I think, the 94 Sunbirds had the MPFI intake, and they have distributorless ignition, so maybe they use them. I don't know. And you can see the turbo engine only humongous oil return to the pan. Here's your oil pump right here. Here is your relief valve on this side, I believe. Or is it this side? Doesn't really matter. I think it might be this side. I don't care. Whatever the case, you can take it apart and bump your oil pressure up a little bit by shimming the spring if you want to. But that's the nuts and bolts of it. So I gotta get the crank and the rods and the pistons out of this thing once I clean the deck surface and cylinder walls up. So that will be next. I guess I lied, and there is one more video today. When I'm done, it'll all be one long video, but I decided to pull the pistons out before I go home. The crank looks beautiful. This thing spins over great. I mean, whee! Look at that, huh? It's got humongous oil transfer holes in the journals. And if I spin it the right way, you can see right there. See? The crank has a really thin casting line. So it's not a forged crank. I don't care what anybody says. These are not forged cranks. I mean, look at it. That's not what a forged crank looks like. That's what a cast crank looks like. This is a cast crank. Yeah, it's like what Monty Python says. This is an ex-pirate, you know. This is a cast crank. So, moving on to the pistons and rods. Again, these rods look to me like they're cast. I mean, forged would have a very wide forging mark on the beam, and these do not. So I'm gonna go with cast. The piston, look inside. There's like a little crown-looking symbol in there. If you can see it or not, way above the part number. That is a Mali insignia, as far as I know. There's a part number in there. I can't read it very well. It looks like a P1607. And the other number is, hang on. Looks like 946498882. Made in, I can't read where it's made in. Made in somewhere, planet Earth. Made in Brazil. So, I don't know. One other thing I'll note is if you look at the bottom of the, what do you call this? The skirt, I guess. I should know the name of that part, but anyway. That part right there, if I can zoom in a little, you will see it's scratched in 438. And that is my friend Scotty, who did the machine work on this engine. He did what he calls match balancing. This one is also 438. 438. 438, right? Sounds like 438. Yeah, 438. So, not that he balanced the engine, he just weighed everything to make sure they were all, you know, reasonably the same. He told me that 4-cylinders inline engines are inherently balanced anyway by design, but I thought that was kind of notable. Rod bearings look good. I mean, this one's a little bit scuffed down through the dull finish, but none of them are beat. I mean, they're, you know, there's no copper, there's nothing like that. I mean, the uppers, yeah, are more beat than the bottom. See the difference? The bottom still has that dull gray coating. You know, when they detonate, the top takes the beating because the piston is hammering down while the crank is going up. The bottom just go along for the ride. So I'll probably put rod bearings in it while I'm here anyway. I'm gonna put probably total seal rings in it. And just, you know, go through it. I mean, it doesn't need a whole lot. I'm sure it's in fine shape. It should be. It's got 7,000 miles on it, for God's sake. But it just seemed like when it's sat, sometimes it huffed a little oil when I first started it, which is probably the valve seals or the guides. I will have my friend Scott, my current machinist buddy, we'll take the head apart, see if it needs a valve job or what. It shouldn't, but, you know, while I'm here, just do it all, you know, just check everything. So that's how you have flawless running machines, right? You take them apart when you have the opportunity and check everything and change what you think needs changing. So anyway, I'm done for the night. This is another view of that thing I told you in the block where the sensor would be. It's just like a bronze piece they drive in, and it would index to that pin. See it? That would be your crank sensor, I believe. It's not as simple as just sticking it in the hole, and this is the crank sensor now. I don't think it works that way. I asked a friend of mine once who was really into computers and these things, and he said, nah, it's not that simple. I have no plans for doing it anyway, but, you know, food for thought. So there you go. I'm done. I'm gonna wrap it up, and next time I'll start cleaning things up and start buying parts for it.